Several years ago, I finally began therapy. And it took a lot of courage to go deeper than I had ever gone with any therapist. I started to begin to wonder, as I waited for a virtual call to connect, if there would ever be a session when I wouldn't be crying. And then my therapist explained, healing is hard. Change is painful. But staying stuck and receiving things that you know are half of what you deserve, well, that pain is exhausting. So let me first also say this, sister to sister. If you try and stumble, forgive yourself. If you leap and land in uncertainty, forgive yourself. If your next act takes way longer than you had hoped, and it becomes messier or quieter or more radical than others can understand, forgive yourself.
Hi there. Welcome to Unspeakable Leadership, a space that transcends time, borders, and barriers to reclaim our stories as women of color, leading in organizations, communities, and in our own lives. I'm your host, Rohene Bouajram. With a 20-year career trajectory of leadership, an aspiring storyteller, mom of a son and a fur baby, first-generation immigrant, and uninvited guest in Canada, I want to thank you for being on this journey with me. Let us grow together in conversation.
What if the leap you are afraid to take is the very one that you're meant to take? Because it might just save your life. I know that this is a big question, and I believe that this season is calling each and every one of us to reflect on it. Now, I'm not talking about those, little steps you take, those little pivots, or that gentle nudge. What I'm actually talking about is what feels like a quantum leap that rearranges everything in your life, pulling you out of the familiar and dropping you into the possibility. Here's the truth. These leaps rarely come with a safety net. I know it's hard to believe that. And it's also hard to believe that anyone won't want to even choose to take that leap. Why? Well, because these leaps often require us to let go of relationships, let go of roles, let go of habits that simply no longer serve the version of the woman we are becoming. I wanted to drop in here and share with you a little bit about how I came to choose her next act as the theme of this season, season 3. Her next act, it came to me during a season of quite rebellion in my life. And you might be wondering, what do I mean by that? Well, I'll set the backdrop for you. I was simply exhausted. I was going through some major transitions of burnout and just sheer exhaustion. And I started to notice that the spaces that I would often find comfort in offered little nourishment. Or I started to see my worth classified by levels that were based on traditional metrics that had not yet evolved with the times that we find ourselves in. And so it was at that time that I started to ask deeper and bigger questions. Ones that I will offer to you today too. The funny thing is that while I was doing that exact same thing of asking bigger and deeper questions, I was finding myself meeting women, sometimes for the first time and sometimes for the 100th time, doing the exact same thing. In the sacredness of catch-up dinners and intimate conversations, we were starting to ask ourselves, what does success actually mean? And moving to a redefinition of moving away from achievement towards alignment. Now, as somebody who has been in leadership for decades, making the next choice to act, it isn't glamorous. It's hard. It's tough. To make a decision to move away from a place or perhaps a role or an environment that you know so well that you could do with your eyes closed, to enter a place of discomfort and unknown, that takes a lot of courage. However, there is a moment when the stepping stones disappear, when that clarity of what's next isn't so obvious anymore. And so the process becomes slightly more messy, and it requires more faith over fear that if we took the leap, we may not have it all figured out, but it would be the better option than staying. Now, you might be rolling your eyes or shaking your head or whispering, nah. And honestly, I get it. A leap of faith is a quantum jump. It's not logical. It's not always about being strategic, even though we will try to be. I feel it's at the cellular level. It calls you before you even have the language for it. And when that call comes, you can either resist or rise. I call them the leaps of our soul. Decisions that don't make sense to the world, but they make peace with your spirit. I have to share with you a couple of stories that are really crucial in our conversation today. I have an amazing friend. I have actually a number of amazing friends, but I wanted to share with you this one. We were having a conversation about how she had left a toxic job. And part of her exit was that she had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, otherwise known as an NDA. And when we were talking about this, I remember her saying to me, Rohene, it wasn't just the silence that was binding me. It was the shame. You see, so many NDAs that people often sign are required because you have to keep things a secret, or perhaps because you cannot share information about what led to your departure. And so the NDA becomes a metaphor for the unspoken contracts that many of us hold to stay silent, to play nice, to not ruffle feathers. But here's the thing. My friend, she's a brilliant woman, and somebody whom I am proud to say that as she was wrestling about her choice of signing the NDA, which she did, that she also made a choice that she was not going to allow the NDA to set a contractual threshold of what she was and who she would become. I think of so many of us who sign these contracts and how much of that becomes a threshold for which we will take our next act or not. Out of fear, out of not wanting to repeat the cycle again, or because we actually start to believe the very things that were written in the NDA, even when our body and our mind and our soul knows they're not true. So sometimes the leaps begin with the internal work that we have to confront first. So it's fitting that I tell you about me. Several years ago, I finally began therapy. And it took a lot of courage to go deeper than I had ever gone with any therapist. Now, this wasn't my first kind of interaction or time with a therapist. I had gone to therapy a couple of times before that. But I have to be honest, those first attempts, I was just trying to be a good patient. I would paraphrase things. I would agree to the things that they would say. And I remember one time ending off with I feel so much better and so clear, and ended that therapy knowing that I might have changed slightly, but not nearly enough than I should have. So it's okay to laugh at me because I had to do that. I didn't actually know the power of therapy until I decided to truly let somebody into my thoughts, into my experiences, and guide me to be able to understand them all. So I wanted to share with you one part of therapy. I remember it was a Friday late afternoon, and we were a couple of sessions in, my therapist and I. And the healing process, I just have to say, was becoming painful. I started to begin to wonder, as I waited for our virtual call to connect, if there would ever be a session when I wouldn't be crying. Like, could I actually show up in a session and find a way to hold back the tears without sobbing uncontrollably at times? Well, like most sessions, we began with a lot of reflections and updates that I would share from my little green notebook that had a mixture of words, scribbles, and tons of drawings during and in between my sessions. That particular session, we were talking about some of my experiences, and my therapist kindly interrupted me and said, "Can I share with you something?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And she said, "I want you to imagine that you are craving Mexican food and you go to one of the best restaurants that serve the best Mexican food. And you sit down and you kind of grab the napkin and you put it on your lap and you grab the menu and you look at all the options, and there are tons of options. And you look around you and there are people who have amazing plates. And your eye gets caught by these incredible tacos. And your mouth instantly waters and you start to salivate and you know you want to have some tacos." She goes on to share that the waiter comes, takes your order, you instantly say, "I want those tacos. I want those ones, the same ones." And the waiter comes with your plate of half-eaten tacos. I laughed awkwardly when I heard that. And I remember my face going from elation because of the buildup and the anticipation to absolute confusion and anger and shock and disappointment and a bit of embarrassment. I don't know why the embarrassment, but I felt all of those emotions all at once. And then my therapist explained, "From everything you keep telling me, you keep accepting crumbs. You keep saying yes to relationships, to jobs, to opportunities that only give you part of what you deserve. Why do you want to keep eating half-eaten tacos? Why do you want to keep receiving half-eaten tacos?" That metaphor and story stayed with me throughout our time together, and it also stays with me till now. Healing is hard. Change is painful. But staying stuck and receiving things that you know are half of what you deserve, well, that pain is exhausting. So sometimes we need to decide, what pain are we exchanging? Do we pay the price for staying stuck? Or do we invest in the discomfort of growth, which might mean making some hard decisions? One depletes you and the other delivers to you. So let me first also say this, sister to sister. If you try and stumble, forgive yourself. If you leap and land in uncertainty, forgive yourself. If your next act takes way longer than you had hoped, and it becomes messier or quieter or more radical than others can understand, forgive yourself. Because sometimes when we're taking those leaps, we're revisiting parts of ourselves that we have locked away under a belief that perhaps this was it. This was the best we could do and we could receive. There's no timeline for transformation. And the noise of the world or comparison to others, that isn't your compass. Your readiness, and when you decide, is. This is the sacred threshold, the place where you've been collides with who you are becoming. Now, I've made some leaps that made no sense on paper, and I'll tell you about them in due course and due time. I've walked away from titles, from comfort, from people that I once thought I couldn't live without. And that was hard. I sat in silence and wondered, did I just ruin everything? But here's what I've learned. The silence after the leap, that isn't failure. It's the cocoon and the incubation stage, just like the silkworms I spoke about in my first episode. It's in that silence that the right messages come through after the leap. So that's why her next act is born. Not because I wanted us to have a season where we could just pat ourselves on the back, and we should, because they are incredible women who you are learning from, who have done courageous, bold, and taken incredible leaps. But sometimes her next act is in the stillness, in the choices that we make when no one is watching.
Hi. Sisterhood is so important to me, but I think you already know that. So guess what? I host unspeakable leadership dinners every month for up to 4 women. The only catch is that you have to be in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, at least for now. The dinners are a space for us as women of color to connect, to laugh, to strategize, and to leave with a network of supportive sisters who have your back. Check out my Working with Rohene page on my website and sign up for one of the dinners today. I can't wait to dine with you.
Now, I said I would ask you those same deeper questions that I asked myself. And so I'm going to ask you this. Where are you still honoring old contracts that no longer serve you? Take some time to write those out, professionally and personally. What half-eaten tacos are you still convincing yourself are enough? And lastly, what would happen if you gave yourself permission to leap even before you felt ready? And if those questions are stirring something in you, then let me offer you this. 5 steps to think about what your next act might look like. The first, get clear on your why. Are you exiting something? that might be toxic or harmful or just not where you're meant to be? Or are you moving towards something greater? Your why is the compass. Second, set your timeline. Name it. 3 months, 6 months, 1 year from now, what's the date? Circle it. Write it on a Post-it note. Put it on your calendar. Because that energy is going to help you align your financial goals and your emotional readiness. Third, lean on your bridges. We each have different areas in our lives that allow our anchoring and our souls to be supported. So think about your financial runway. Optimize your finances by building a savings. Create new income streams, or think through what a transition budget might mean for your next act. Look at your skills. See if there are things that you need to do to start to build yourself up and bridge your skills with areas that you want to grow in. That might mean looking at certificates, getting coaching, or finding a way to showcase your leadership and your thought leadership. Gather your people. You have mentors. You have people who see you. There are people who might be willing to refer you, say your name in spaces, sponsor you. Lean on them because they will be the ones to hold your vision with you. Fourth, protect your reputation. Your character, that's yours. Whatever space you choose to leave with grace. If you are rehearsing your resignation letter every day, get out the different versions of that resignation letter on your own or with a trusted group of people, so that when the time comes for you to gracefully exit, you will speak your truth without burning the bridges. And I'm not saying this because I believe that we always have to keep the bridges going, but it's more because of you. You want to be able to sleep at night knowing that you left on a high note, unless burning the bridges is necessary for your healing. And if you want to leave a legacy, because I know my sister, we sometimes want to leave things as good or better than before we began, then sure, document your brilliance. But don't take the transition on with any guilt. That's not your burden or weight to bear. Lastly, don't just leave. I know sometimes when we walk away from places, it can feel like a part of us is staying. So find a way to step into your next act with a large plan that has a soft transition, an announcement that aligns with you, and a choice in how you want to be uplifted as you are welcomed into a new place, a new space. I want you to remember, the leap isn't the end. It's the start, and you don't have to leap alone. This season, I really wanted you to hear from voices and stories of women who have dared to rewrite their scripts. Entrepreneurs, authors, creatives, disruptors, healers, visionaries, all stepping into her next act or have stepped into her next act. As we continue our conversations, I want you to remember this. Your next act doesn't require an audience. It just requires your yes. So take that leap. The safety net may not appear, but you will. You and I were never meant to survive on crumbs. We were meant to feast on fullness. And let's stop pretending that half-eaten tacos are enough or that NDAs define our leadership. We do. I'm excited as our journey continues. I'm so glad that you're here with me, always.